April.
Yes.
Would you like to remove the next number? What do we have? Space-time. Would you also like to remove the 4A and B? What do we have there? A little space-time graph. All right. Now, let us explain. We have talked about this briefly before. Oh, you may sit. Thank you very much. The idea is, you already know from what you call your science of relativity, or some of you may not know this, that there is an effect in your reality called time dilation. That when you move, let's say in a spaceship, faster and faster and faster and faster, and approach what you call the speed of light, which is simply, in a sense, the border of your particular reality. Doesn't mean you can't actually travel faster. It's just the border of your particular reality, just the threshold. But in your physical reality, while you travel in your physical reality up to the speed of light, the phenomenon called time dilation is noticed to occur. What this simply means is, the faster you move in space, the slower you move in time. Time slows down. This is what creates the twin paradox, as many of your scientists have expressed it, so that if you imagine there are two twins that are the same age, and one steps into a spacecraft and goes out into the stars and travels very close to the speed of light, time for them on the ship will slow down to the point that when they come back, they may actually be many, many, many years younger than the twin who stayed on Earth, who will have aged in the meantime. The idea to understanding this is to understanding space-time as a 100% idea. There can only be 100% space-time. So, if you are traveling at 50% of the speed of light, then the idea is that you are using up that much space. There's only 50% of time left. So you can only experience half the time. The closer you travel to the speed of light, you're using up more and more of the space of space-time, and there is less and less of the time left. So you only experience a little bit of it. So if you're traveling at 99%, you're only experiencing 1% of time and 99% of space. Conversely, when you're standing perfectly still, as most of you are right now, you're experiencing almost all of time and very little of space at all. You're not moving around. So it's always a shared idea. Whatever you use of time, you can only have that much space left. Whatever you use of space, you only have that much time to use. The graph shows you this in this way. The line is all of time at one end, all of space at the other end. And when you start moving and expanding your use of space from zero into a cone that widens, then you have very little time left. But when you go the other way and use all of the idea the other way, then the cone moves in the other direction. It's just an expansion cone. I'm using very little here, I'm using a lot here. Using very little of this when I'm using a lot of this, but when I'm using a little of this, I'm using a lot of that. So it's just a double cone going in this way to show you when you are using a little bit of this or a lot of that. You follow me so far? All right. Now, this is also the key to building a space-time antenna. A device that actually uses space-time energy that you can then learn to translate into different forms of energy if you wish, such as electricity or light or heat or whatever you wish to do with it. The space-time antenna actually takes the form of this graph, of the two intersecting cones. So if you imagine in your mind right now, let's say made out of a spiral copper wire or a spiral tube. Imagine starting on the ground, and imagine bringing the tube around in a circle and then spiraling it upward, getting smaller and smaller in circumference. You're describing a cone. You're spiraling up to the tip of the cone. However high you want the cone to be, doesn't matter. However wide you want to start, doesn't matter right now for the purpose of this illustration. It will matter later in terms of fine-tuning the geometry to get the right effect. But right now, just for the purpose of this illustration, just imagine starting on the ground, start spiraling your tube around and around and around, smaller, smaller, till you have a cone made up out of a spiraled tube. At the top, at the very tip of the cone, then take that tube and move it out to the same diameter as the base of the cone and start spiraling your way down through the other cone. So when you spiral it up, leave some gaps in between the tube so that when you spiral down, you can go through those gaps and actually have the two cones interpenetrating. Until you get all the way down, now you're inside the base of the first cone, creating a downward-facing cone, and you get down to the tip at the bottom, and then bring that out and connect it to the base of the other cone. Now you have two interpenetrating cones, one facing up, one pointing down. In a sense, it's almost like the idea of the Solomon seal, or what you now call the Jewish star, the six-pointed star. If you look at it simply flat on, it will sort of appear a little bit like this idea, although not quite exactly. But it's the idea of two interpenetrating triangles. When you create this kind of a resonant device and you do it where the cones are actually angled at their apices at 33 degrees, you will be able to actually have a space-time antenna. Depending upon the quality of your material, the number of windings, the size of the cone, and what have you, and other conditions, you can actually cause this cone with a little bit of an electrical charge to start resonating at a certain frequency that will amplify that energy by drawing down from space-time energy and thus then giving out more energy than you're putting in. So, this diagram, this space-time diagram, shows you literally graphically how to create a space-time antenna for those of you who might be interested in playing with this idea as a fun home experiment. Well, this is where our children start. So have some fun. Explore with it if you wish. It's up to you. Or use this idea by imagining it simply in your imagination and play with what that shape does when you get it in your mind's eye in terms of opening you up to other levels of communication as well, because you can use it that way too. You don't have to physicalize it to get an effect within your own consciousness, but you can physicalize it to get an effect in physical reality. So play with it however you wish. If you also do it in your mind, and you see that shape in your mind, if you can also learn to view it three-dimensionally and start turning it, rotating it in your mind, and see it in different angles, that will absolutely heighten and increase your ability to tap into other dimensional frequencies as well. So play with this however you wish. And have fun. Have fun. Have fun.